Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Aaron Ashman, and today we're going to be talking about medical school. Why medical school? Good question. That's because I'm going to be going to one in a couple of years, but that's not the main reason why I'm making this video. This video is to inform you guys as to why I think most people get rejected from medical school. From like the entirety of the population that applied to medical schools last year, about 60% of them got rejected. Now clearly that's a very high amount, and there are many reasons as to why it can influence these, but these are the reasons why I think these are the big three reasons that I think personally affects your chances of getting into a very reputed or even a non-reputed medical school. So the first one, being the most obvious, is your academic career. So through your academic career, your GPA is one thing that is very important. Now, there's one thing that we have to understand about this. GPA is not everything, that is true. And especially when you're applying to the undergraduate programs in college or any other graduate programs, GPA is something that is not as important. But in medical school, GPA is one of the most defining characteristics of who you are as a person, believe it or not. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a sign of your personality, but this is most certainly a sign of your intellect in front of the board members who are going to be deciding whether or not you get your admittance letter to any of the medical schools that you are deciding to go to. Now, there are some other things. One of those things is the MCATs, the standardized test that is going to be the make or break deal, as many people like to put it. And truthfully, it probably is as well. If you don't have a very good MCAT score, then your GPA must compensate for it. Or vice versa. If you don't have a very good GPA, your MCAT score, just try to do as well as you can, because even if you do have a bad GPA, they might find potential when they actually see your MCAT score and what you're capable of. But one thing is important to understand. If you have a bad GPA right now, or let's say that you're in college, if you're in college right now, and if you have a bad GPA, then it's not too late yet, because of the fact that these medical schools do consider the fact that you may have gone through different calamities in your own life throughout your educational career, and that's natural for any human being to go through something like that. Everybody goes through something. So if, let's say, you did very poorly in your freshman year, and if you're in your sophomore, junior, or senior year right now, they like to see an upward trend of your GPA. So let's say you did very poorly on during your freshman year, and then you started excelling sophomore year and junior year, senior year. They just like to see that growth pattern. Now, many people think that, let's say that you had a 2.0 GPA in your freshman year of college, and then during sophomore year you had a 4.0, so it averages out to a 3.0. And then the next year, if you get a 3.0 as your GPA, is the average still going to be a 3.0? The answer is yes and no. Even though your average for the next year is a 3.0 and it isn't as great as it was your sophomore year where it was a 4.0, it will still show that you have overcome whatever troubles you had your freshman year, at least, because compared to a 2.0, a 3.0 is a pretty good place to stand. And I believe that's over the 78th percentile of all college students anyways. So is that good enough? Maybe not, but will that help you nonetheless? Definitely. So in your final year, if you are in your final year right now, then try to do as well as possible, because you want to end on a good note. Now, second thing is extracurriculars. Now, some people think that this is not very necessary when it comes to applying to graduate schools, but trust me, this is one of the make or break things that will get you into medical school or won't. Now, what do I mean when I say this? The admissions board like to see people who have leadership qualities and have had served in other positions where they have demonstrated their leadership. So the reason they want to do this is because in the future, if you, let's say, want to be a surgery or the head of research, you will have to be able to communicate properly with your subordinates, and you'll have to be able to give commands out without a problem. And medical schools do a very effective job of weeding out these people who they think would be able to do a good job, you know, in whatever field they actually end up going into, let's say surgery or research. In the end, who they want to pick are the people who are qualified, and this is one aspect which is very necessary. And the second thing is giving back to the community. Even though there are no such thing as community service hours requirements for medical schools, even though you might still get accepted without having any community service hours in medical schools, you'll have to still be a very lucky person to get into any medical school at all without any community service hours or any mention of how you gave back to the community. The reason is that the majority of the people who are entering medical school are doing so to become doctors in the future. Doctors primarily serve patients, and their primary job, if you ask me, is actually giving back to the community rather than the money that it entails. Money is just a byproduct of what is actually to come, because 4 years of undergrads, 4 years of medical school, and then 8 years or even more of that of residency is just a commitment to humanity, if you ask me. It's nothing to do with money, because money is just a byproduct of something that you were going to achieve, and the achievement is not money, it's to save lives. And in order to do that, you have to be a person who's willing to give back to the community. And if you are thinking about the medical field, I'm sure you are, but the admissions board needs to see what you have done in your past that shows this. And I mean, community service things, when I say this, I'm not just talking about going to Salvation Army and serving a couple of hours over there. This is not an undergraduate level admission anymore. This is medical school. We are talking about 40%, only 40% of applicants get accepted. So what you would want to do, without a doubt, is try to launch a big project. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do this, but you could end up going to Salvation Army and serving there while you're still in college, and you could say that you've worked there for 4 years, which can also work to your benefit. But my recommendation is, even if it's not a huge success, or even if you think that you can't perform this on a very large scale or can't raise a lot of money for charity, still try to do something on your own. Just get a group of friends and then just try to launch something. Even if it fails, that's all right. What the medical board wants to see is how or what you have tried in the past in order to give back to the community, not exactly what you've achieved, because achievement is never guaranteed. But one thing that is guaranteed is the effort that you put into it, and that's defined primarily by you. So that is a very important thing, giving back to the community, which falls under extracurriculars. Now the third thing is the range of options for medical schools that a typical medical student thinks he or she has. The problem with this is that medical schools are getting increasingly competitive, which is, of course, not a surprise to us. There are more applicants than ever before. There were more applicants last year than ever before in recorded history. I mean, obviously because our level of education is going up and our standard of living is going up and life expectancy is going up, as well as a direct correlation to this, I believe at least. But regardless of all those things, medical schools still have a very low acceptance rate. For example, let's talk about Harvard Medical School. I think they have just above a 3% acceptance rate to their medical school, or maybe not even that. And same thing goes for any of the Ivy Leagues that fall under this category. Yale School of Medicine, Johns Hopkins, even though they're not Ivy League, Johns Hopkins is not an Ivy League. They still have an amazing medical program, probably the best according to my opinion. But regardless, all of these great colleges or medical schools have exceptionally low amounts of admissions. The reason for this is because they want to weed out from the people who they know and think will be successful versus who won't. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't aim high. You shouldn't aim for the Ivy League. You should absolutely apply to all of the Ivy Leagues if you can definitely afford it. But what you should also realize is that even if you think you're qualified in every single way, there's always a possibility that you might still get rejected. So it's better to have backup plans and apply to as many medical schools as you can think of, or as many medical schools as you can, as you think that you're fit for. And doing so will help you in the journey a lot, because most medical students, what they end up doing is just applying to 4 or 5 schools which are Ivy Leagues, or they have very low acceptance rates. It's possible that you are a very good student. You can have a 4.0 GPA. It's fine. You can have a near perfect MCAT score. You can have years of experience in leadership / community service outreach, or community outreach, or whatever. You might still not get accepted. There's always a possibility for that, because there's always going to be somebody who probably has, a much better resume, or a much better project that he or she launched for his or her community service project or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that is a requirement, but that's definitely important. So in the end, don't just end up applying to a couple of very good schools and then be disappointed if they don't accept you, because there's a very high likelihood that they won't, regardless of how good you are, as I repeatedly keep on saying. So it's always a good idea to have a lot of safety nets. Now, it's hard for me to say that these schools are safety nets, because they're medical schools as well. They're just as reputed. If they are accredited, then they are medical schools, and you'll still have a medical practicing license at the end of your 4 years, regardless of which school you end up going to. So it is not a bad idea to apply to at least 10 medical schools. If you are legitimately thinking about going to medical school, apply to at least 10 medical schools, because it's very highly likely that applying to a couple will probably not get you anywhere. But these are the 3 main reasons why I think most people get rejected from medical school. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time.